Two.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving break, and I hope that we're all staying positive and testing negative throughout these very uncertain times. Today, we're going to be going over Chapter 9, Research Methods, Qualitative Research. I'm Ryan.
I'm Yuri.
I'm Nathan.
So, the way we want to kind of explore qualitative research is through a bit of a metaphor, an example, if you will. So, imagine you're an alien and you're flying through space in your spaceship and you want to find some intelligent life to study. So far, you and your alien scientist colleagues haven't found anything noteworthy to study until you slingshot around Mars, this wonderful planet over here. It's known by its inhabitants as Earth, and it seems to be a relatively decently sized planet with lots of water, but it seems to be teeming with intelligent life. So the question is now, how will you study humanity? So humanity is complex in a way that it's hard for numbers to describe. You can do quantitative research, of course, to get a good picture of how human society works. But if you really truly want to go in depth, you're going to have to do more qualitative research that doesn't necessarily look for correlation or statistical relationships. So there are many ways you can go about this. The first and most popular form of qualitative research is the case study. So the case study here is that it basically studies a unique individual or set of peculiar cases. It gathers lots of data based off of interviews, writings, or observations. And the whole purpose of the case study, the rule of thumb here, is to get context around the subject of the study. But just remember, case studies usually have a limited data set. So when you do a case study, make sure that you get the contact information of whatever subject that you're trying to study, and make sure that you get their consent before you start studying them. So, for example, a case study can be in this man right here, Donald J. Trump. Based on what your initial observations are in interviews with people who are familiar with this individual right here, he seems to be a very controversial figure in modern human history. His rise to power coincided with the rise of political divisiveness. While he's supported by many, he's also hated by many. And he's currently disputing election results for his country's latest election. And while he is very charismatic, he's also seen as a wild card in American politics. Second type of qualitative research study is an ethnography. It's basically like a case study, but of many people. It studies groups of people for a long time to pick up belief systems and implicit patterns in those groups of people. And along with case studies, ethnographies are also made with careful observations and interviews, but make sure that you have to get informed consent. So it's basically ethnographies are the plural of case studies. So you can do an ethnography on Trump supporters. They seem to have a bit of a hostility towards opposition. They tend to be very patriotic. They tend to be religious and conservative. And there's greater concentrations of them within the Midwest and southern United States. A lot of them are also very vocal with their support of President Trump. The third one is a phenomenological study. It studies how one person or a group's perspective via interviews is affected by an event, right? And phenomenological study asks is, how was this person affected by a certain event? For example, a question of a phenomenological study can be, what was it like to be there on 9/11, right? And obviously, from interviews with people who remember that day very vividly, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of shock, a lot of anger. Some may describe it as the scariest day in modern American history. The fourth one is a grounded theory analysis. So essentially what this is that based off of your initial interviews and observations and writings, you build a theoretical framework from your qualitative data. Essentially you observe, discover, and then you make a theory. For example, a grounded theory analysis of humanity may seem that humans are very tribalistic. Based off of the politics that you've seen play out between these nations, people are united under banners of shared culture, and they find it difficult to empathize with others who are not from their own culture. For humans, it's easy to see other humans, even though that they share the exact same biology and the exact same wishes. They seem to not be able to empathize with each other, not very much. And while some attempts can easily overcome their nature, it appears that humanity has built very, very large and very, very scary weapons that can destroy each other very easily, when in reality, they probably should be working together towards a better future. The fourth and final one is content analysis. It analyzes human and studies human forms of communication, whether it be writing in text and other types of writings. It basically gains insight on groups of people's beliefs and attitudes. For example, content analysis can be a tweet analysis based off of Twitter, and you may ask yourself, what are the symbols and slash phrases used by fans of BTS? And you may discover that there are a lot of GIFs and a lot of what seem to be fan cams of their people's favorite K-pop idols. And there are phrases like bias, comeback, stan, daesan, maknae. Very interesting stuff to study. So the takeaways here is that qualitative research is meant to unearth beliefs, opinions, and thoughts that you can't find in quantitative research. This type of research is meant to describe and understand the world around you on a truly deeper level. So some things to consider. Since this research is pretty open-ended, it may be difficult for you to find narrow in focus. You need a lot of preparation and background knowledge. And based off of a lot of the qualitative research out there, you have to put a lot of effort into your lit review to ensure that you understand the context and you don't misinterpret what your observations are. For example, I'm doing my research on multi-domain operations. I'm basically going to be using a grounded theory analysis on how the military will conduct multi-domain operations. My data is going to be interviews with experts that will be combined with more additional research.
All right. So when it comes to qualitative research, there's a difference in the focus of the research and therefore a difference in the data that is needed. While the other form of research, quantitative research, is only focused on the quantities and numerical values that research subjects produce, qualitative research instead chooses to focus on the qualities and values of the research subjects in order to learn more about the group that they are studying. There are multiple ways to gather data in qualitative research, from observations, interviews, documents, among others. In reality, there really is no limit to what can serve as the data in qualitative research except for the research team's own creativity. All right, so when drawing a conclusion about a particular population or body, as in our previous extended metaphor, the ability to measure the entire population is ideal. However, unless the population you are studying is made up of only a handful of individuals, chances are you will not be able to. Because of this dilemma, qualitative researchers developed a convenient workaround. The workaround was to instead be selective with the population observed and to only focus on the groups that could provide researchers with the answers needed to form a conclusion. Two examples of this selective sampling in qualitative research are theoretical sampling, which is the action of choosing data sources most likely to develop a clear theory or hypothesis. And the second example is known as discriminant sampling, in which researchers will return to a particular pre-selected data source in order to help further their pre-existing theories. One of the main sources of data collection in qualitative research is the observation. Since observations allow researchers to view their subjects' actions and reactions in different situations over a period of time. If you decide to use observations in your own qualitative research, you should first practice with different observational data collection strategies. Next, if you are working with people, you should have someone introduce you to your subjects if you can and gain their consent first. And last, but certainly not least, you should try to stay as quiet as possible during the time of observation. Another highly effective data collection technique in qualitative research is the interview. Since the main focus of qualitative research is the deep understanding of your subjects, you will be aiming to get to know your interviewees on a personal level rather than a numerical one. To do this, asking open-ended personal questions is essential. These questions could include biographical information, feelings, motives, past and present behaviors, and the reasons for their actions or feelings. To conduct a productive interview, there are many tips and rules and guidelines you should follow. These could include identifying general questions and sub-questions in advance, considering the influence of cultural backgrounds or on their answers, and have your sample include people who will get you the right information. Finding a suitable location, getting written permission, establishing and maintaining a connection with your interviewees, focusing on specifics instead of abstract questions, trying not to put words in people's mouths, as in trying not to finish their answers for them, just let their answers come to you, record the responses verbatim and do not paraphrase, keeping your reactions to yourself, remembering that your participants Yet that your participants' answers are opinions, not facts, and understanding the group dynamics to make sure everyone answers the questions.
Technology can also be a useful tool in collecting data. Most media devices, modern media devices, can be used to capture information, and surveys can be conducted over long distances via the internet. Laptops and smartphones can record audio, for example, and transcription services and programs can help with interpretation and analysis of data. One must also remember that ethical standards must be kept up, even over internet-based platforms. Now, when you evaluate qualitative research, there's a methodology that readers, reviewers, and practitioners can use to evaluate the potential worth of a study that they find. This process involves 9 different steps. Step 1, purposefulness. You must evaluate for purposefulness, which means that you must decide whether the research question, you must decide if the research question is the center of the study. The study cannot be driven by its process. For step 2, you must analyze it for the explicitness of assumptions and biases. The researcher might identify any potential personal biases and situations that might influence the quality or results of his study. For example, in my study about musical intonation, I must remember that I have a very European bias. European systems have been widely used all throughout the world, even though there are other systems of tuning, such as Asian or Middle Eastern. For the third component, we have rigor. You must evaluate a study for rigor. The study must exhibit a certain degree of rigor and meticulous adherence to quality standards. For step number 4, we have open-mindedness. The researcher has to show a willingness to examine and accept new ideas and outcomes. This is similar to step number 2. And for step number 5, we have completeness. The study obviously has to be completed and fully documented in order for it to be acceptable. Number 6, we have coherence, which means that in order to prove anything, the results of a study must yield understandable and consistent findings. For step 7, we have persuasiveness. The reader, or sorry, that's a typo. The researcher must present a logical argument that makes sense and is well supported by his or her evidence and by his or her data. For number 8, we have consensus. Your study, in order to be accepted as reliable, it has to agree with other interpretations and explanations in the field, whether these interpretations are studies that are done beforehand, studies that came before your study, or studies that will come after as a result of your study. In order to be accepted, a study has to have a consensus with other data in the field. And finally, for number 9, we have usefulness. The study has to promote findings that lead to A, a better understanding of the topic, B, accurate predictions about the future, or C, a better quality of life for a population. That should be it. Thank you.